Get your hands off me, Marcus!
Elena's voice echoed against the cold bathroom tiles as her ex-boyfriend's fingers dug into her wrist. The charity gala's music seemed miles away now, muffled by the heavy door he'd slammed behind them.
We're not done talking,
Marcus hissed, his face inches from hers. His breath reeked of whiskey and desperation. You can't just ignore my calls forever, Elena. You owe me an explanation.
I don't owe you anything.
She tried to twist away, but his grip tightened. The elegant black cocktail dress she'd chosen so carefully for tonight now felt like a trap, restricting her movements. Let me go, or I'll scream. Marcus laughed bitterly. Go ahead. This bathroom is soundproof, sweetheart. I made sure of that before I followed you in here. His other hand moved to her shoulder, pressing her back against the marble sink. 3 years, Elena. 3 years we were together, and you throw it all away for what? Some fantasy about finding a better man? Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd known coming to this gala was risky. Marcus moved in these social circles, and she'd hoped to avoid him. But when her best friend Sarah had insisted she needed to get out and socialize again after their messy breakup 2 months ago, she'd finally agreed. Now she regretted that decision with every fiber of her being. You're pathetic, she spat, trying to channel her fear into anger. This is exactly why I left you, Marcus. You're controlling, possessive, and clearly unstable. His face darkened, and for a moment Elena saw something dangerous flicker in his pale blue eyes. Marcus had always had a temper, but she'd never seen him like this. Unhinged, desperate. His brown hair was disheveled, his usually pristine appearance cracking at the edges. Unstable? He pressed closer, trapping her completely against the sink. I'll show you unstable. Do you have any idea what you've put me through? The humiliation? Everyone asking where my beautiful girlfriend went, having to make excuses for why you weren't at the company parties anymore? That's not my problem, Elena whispered, but her voice was weaker now. Fear was winning over anger. Oh, but it is? Marcus's hand moved from her shoulder to her throat, not squeezing, but making his threat clear. You're going to walk back out there with me. You're going to smile and play the part of the loving girlfriend, and then we're going to go back to your apartment and work this out properly. Elena's vision blurred with tears of rage and terror. How had she ever thought she loved this man? How had she wasted 3 years of her life with someone who would corner her in a bathroom and threaten her? The heavy door suddenly swung open, and both Elena and Marcus froze. A tall figure filled the doorway, silhouetted against the bright light of the hallway. As the man stepped inside, Elena's breath caught in her throat. She recognized him immediately. Everyone in the city did. Dante Romano, heir to one of the most powerful families in the underground world. Though officially he was just a successful businessman who donated generously to charity. His reputation preceded him everywhere. Ruthless, intelligent, and devastatingly handsome. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his black tuxedo fitted to perfection across his broad shoulders. But it was his eyes that made Elena's pulse race. Dark, calculating, and currently fixed on Marcus with an expression that could freeze hell itself. Leave, Dante said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Or die. Marcus's hand immediately dropped from Elena's throat, but he didn't step back. This is a private conversation, Romano. Walk away. Elena watched in fascination and terror as Dante's lips curved into something that might have been called a smile, if it hadn't been so coldly predatory. He stepped fully into the bathroom and closed the door behind him with a soft click that sounded deafening in the sudden silence. Private? Dante repeated, his Italian accent subtle but unmistakable. In a public restroom with a woman who clearly doesn't want to be here? His gaze flicked to Elena, taking in her tears, her defensive posture, the red marks on her wrist where Marcus had gripped her. Something dark and dangerous shifted in his expression. This is none of your business, Marcus insisted, but Elena could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. Elena and I are working through some relationship issues. No, Elena said quickly, finding her voice again. We're not. We broke up 2 months ago. I don't want anything to do with him. Dante nodded slowly, never taking his eyes off Marcus. The lady has spoken. Yet you're still here, still touching what doesn't belong to you. He took a step forward, and despite being roughly the same height as Marcus, he somehow seemed to tower over him. I don't like repeating myself, friend, but I'll make an exception this once. Leave. Now. Marcus's face flushed red. You can't just threaten people, Romano. I know who you are, what you do. But this isn't your world. This is a charity gala, not some back alley deal. Every world is my world, Dante replied softly. His hand moved to his jacket, and although Elena couldn't see what he was reaching for, Marcus apparently could. The blood drained from her ex-boyfriend's face. You wouldn't, Marcus breathed. Not here. Too many witnesses. Dante's smile widened, showing perfect white teeth. Who says there would be witnesses? Accidents happen at these events all the time. Tragic, really. Promising young executive slips and hits his head in the bathroom. Such a shame. Elena pressed herself back against the sink, caught between terror and an inexplicable thrill. She'd never seen raw power like this before. The kind of absolute confidence that came from knowing you could destroy someone with a word or a gesture. It should have frightened her. Instead, she found herself mesmerized by the deadly grace in Dante's movements, the controlled violence simmering just beneath his civilized surface. Marcus finally stepped back, his hands raised in surrender. Fine, I'm going. But this isn't over, Elena. You and I have history. The only history you'll have is as a cautionary tale, Dante said pleasantly. If I see you near Miss... He paused, raising an eyebrow at Elena. Sinclair, she whispered. Elena Sinclair. If I see you near Miss Sinclair again, if I hear you've so much as looked in her direction, I will take it very personally. And you don't want that, Marcus? The way he said her ex-boyfriend's name made it sound like a curse. Marcus shot Elena one last venomous look before practically fleeing from the bathroom. The door slammed behind him, leaving Elena alone with the most dangerous man in the city. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Elena tried to process what had just happened, tried to understand why Dante Romano had intervened on behalf of a complete stranger. Her hands shook as she smoothed down her dress, hyper-aware of his dark gaze following her movements. Thank you, she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Dante moved closer, and Elena's breath hitched. Up close, he was even more imposing, and more attractive. His olive skin was flawless, his features sharp and aristocratic. There was a small scar above his left eyebrow that only added to his dangerous appeal. When he reached out slowly, telegraphing his movements, Elena didn't flinch away. His fingers were gentle as they lifted her chin, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. Did he hurt you? The simple question, asked with such quiet intensity, nearly broke Elena's composure entirely. When was the last time someone had asked if she was hurt and actually cared about the answer? Marcus certainly never had. Not badly, she admitted. Just scared me. Dante's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Fear is a powerful weapon. He was using it against you. I know. I should have been stronger. Should have fought back harder. No. His thumb brushed across her cheek, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. You survived. That's what matters. Everything else, that's on him. Elena stared up into his dark eyes, seeing something she hadn't expected. Genuine concern, carefully hidden beneath layers of controlled danger. Why did you help me? You don't even know me. A ghost of a real smile crossed his lips. I know enough, and I've never been able to walk away from a beautiful woman in distress. His hand dropped from her face, and she immediately missed the warmth of his touch. Besides, Marcus Coldwell has been making himself a nuisance in my circles for months. Consider this a public service. You know Marcus? Unfortunately, he's been trying to get backing for some real estate venture, throwing around connections he doesn't have, making promises he can't keep. He's sloppy, desperate, and dangerous. A bad combination. Dante straightened his tie with casual elegance. I was planning to have a conversation with him anyway. Tonight simply provided the perfect opportunity. Elena shivered, wondering what kind of conversation Dante had been planning. She was probably better off not knowing. I should get back to the gala, she said reluctantly. My friend Sarah will be wondering where I disappeared to. Sarah Mitchell, the event coordinator? Elena blinked in surprise. You know Sarah? She's organized several fundraisers for my foundation. Good woman, excellent taste in friends, apparently. Dante moved to the door, then paused. Miss Sinclair, may I ask you something? Of course. What did you see in him? Marcus, I mean. You're clearly intelligent, beautiful, independent. What made you waste 3 years on a man who would corner you in a bathroom? The question hit harder than Elena expected. She'd been asking herself the same thing for months, ever since she'd finally found the courage to leave. He wasn't always like this, she said slowly. In the beginning, he was charming, attentive. He made me feel special, wanted. It was only later that I realized his attention was actually control in disguise. Dante nodded thoughtfully. The best predators are often the most charming. They have to be, to lure in prey as exceptional as yourself. Something warm unfurled in Elena's chest at his words. Not just the compliment, but the way he said it, as if her worth was simply an undeniable fact. Thank you, she said again, for everything. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't. You don't need to thank me. But Elena? The way he said her name sent shivers down her spine. If he bothers you again, if anyone bothers you, call me. He pulled out a business card, expensive stock with elegant lettering. His personal number was written on the back in bold, confident strokes. Elena took the card, their fingers brushing for just a moment. The contact sent electricity shooting up her arm. I couldn't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. His dark eyes were intense, hypnotic. Consider it insurance. Before Elena could respond, Dante opened the door and gestured for her to precede him. As they stepped back into the bright hallway, the sounds of the gala rushed over them. Laughter, conversation, the soft music of the string quartet. It felt surreal after the intensity of the past few minutes. Dante! A woman's voice called out, and Elena turned to see an elegantly dressed older woman approaching them. She had silver hair styled in a sophisticated chignon, and shrewd blue eyes that missed nothing. There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. Aunt Sophia, Dante said smoothly, and Elena caught the genuine affection in his voice. Allow me to introduce Miss Elena Sinclair. Elena, this is my aunt, Sophia Romano. Sophia's eyes lit up with interest as she looked between Elena and her nephew. Sinclair, you're the art curator, aren't you, from the Metropolitan Museum? Elena was surprised to be recognized. Yes, though I'm actually between positions at the moment. Perfect timing then, Sophia said with a smile that reminded Elena strongly of Dante. We've been looking for someone to help us catalog and display our family's art collection. It's extensive and requires someone with both expertise and discretion. Elena glanced at Dante, wondering if this was his doing, but his expression revealed nothing. That sounds like an incredible opportunity, but I'm not sure I'm qualified for something so specialized. Nonsense, Sophia waved away her protests. Dante told me about your work on the Renaissance exhibition last year. Brilliant stuff from what I heard. When had Dante had time to research her background? They'd been together for less than 20 minutes, most of it in a bathroom standoff with her psychotic ex-boyfriend. Elena filed that question away for later consideration. Think about it, Sophia continued. We can discuss terms later, but I assure you the compensation would be generous, and the collection itself is quite remarkable. Some pieces haven't been seen by the public in decades. Elena! Sarah's voice cut through the conversation as her best friend appeared at her elbow, slightly breathless. There you are. I was starting to worry when you disappeared for so long. Her eyes widened as she took in Elena's companions. Mr. Romano, Mrs. Romano, thank you so much for coming tonight. The pleasure is ours, Sophia said graciously. We were just trying to steal your friend away from you for a business proposition. Sarah's eyebrows shot up. Really? Elena, that's wonderful. We haven't agreed to anything yet, Elena said quickly, feeling overwhelmed by how rapidly her evening was changing course. Of course not, Dante said smoothly. Take your time to consider it, though I should mention that the position would require some evening and weekend work. The collection is housed at the family estate, and some of the pieces are sensitive to regular viewing hours. Elena caught the subtle emphasis on sensitive and wondered what exactly she would be getting herself into. Working for the Romano family would be incredible for her career, but it would also mean spending time in Dante's world, a world where men like him could make other men disappear with quiet threats and cold smiles. I should warn you, she said, trying to keep her tone light. I don't have much experience with dangerous situations. Dante's eyes gleamed with something that might have been amusement. Don't worry, Miss Sinclair. I'll make sure you're well protected. The promise in his voice made her pulse race. Elena was beginning to realize that Dante Romano might be far more dangerous to her peace of mind than Marcus had ever been, just in an entirely different way. Well, Sarah said brightly, clearly sensing undercurrents she didn't understand. Why don't we get back to the party? The auction is starting soon, and I know several people who've been asking to meet you, Elena. As they made their way back into the main ballroom, Elena found herself walking beside Dante, while Sarah and Sophia chatted about the evening's fundraising goals. The ballroom was magnificent, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over elegantly dressed guests, tables laden with white roses, and flickering candles. You're thinking very hard about something, Dante observed quietly. Elena glanced up at him, noting how other guests seemed to part naturally before them, offering respectful nods and careful smiles. His presence commanded attention without him having to demand it. I'm wondering what I'm getting myself into, she admitted. This evening has been unexpected. The best things usually are. His hand settled lightly on the small of her back as they navigated through the crowd, and Elena felt that same electric sensation from earlier. Tell me, Elena, what do you do for excitement? The question caught her off guard. Excitement? I read a lot. Visit museums. Try new restaurants with Sarah. Even as she said it, she realized how mundane her life sounded. Dante seemed to consider this. And what did you do with Marcus for excitement? We didn't, really. He preferred quiet evenings at home, said going out too much was frivolous. She paused, remembering. Actually, he said a lot of things were frivolous. My job, my friends, my interests. And yet you stayed with him for 3 years. There was no judgment in his voice, only curiosity, but Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks anyway. It's complicated when you're in it, she said defensively. The criticism starts small, reasonable sounding. By the time you realize what's happening, they've convinced you that maybe they're right. Maybe you are too sensitive or too demanding, or too much? Dante finished softly. Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper. They had reached their table. Somehow, Elena found herself seated between Dante and Sarah, with Sophia across from them. As the auction began, Elena tried to focus on the proceedings, but she was hyper-aware of the man beside her. The way he bid on items with subtle gestures, the way other guests deferred to him, the way he occasionally leaned close to murmur observations that made her laugh despite herself. The Monet reproduction, he said quietly as a painting came up for auction. What do you think? Elena studied the piece being displayed. It's beautiful, but the brushstrokes are too precise. Monet was looser, more impressionistic, especially in his later works. This feels too controlled. Excellent eye. Dante smiled at her, and Elena felt ridiculously pleased by his approval. The auction house authenticated it, but I had my doubts. You were testing me. Always. His grin was boyishly charming, at odds with his dangerous reputation. It's a habit of mine. I like to know who I'm dealing with. As the evening progressed, Elena found herself relaxing for the first time in months. Dante was an engaging conversationalist, knowledgeable about art and history, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. He asked thoughtful questions about her work and actually listened to the answers, a simple courtesy that felt revolutionary after years with Marcus. It wasn't until they were preparing to leave that reality intruded again. As Elena collected her wrap from the coat check, she spotted Marcus across the lobby, clearly waiting for her. Her blood turned to ice. Elena. Dante appeared at her shoulder, having noticed her sudden tension. His eyes followed her gaze and hardened. Stay close to me. They walked toward the exit together, Sarah and Sophia slightly ahead of them. Marcus intercepted them halfway across the marble lobby. Elena, he said, his voice carefully controlled but his eyes wild. I think we need to finish our conversation from earlier. There's nothing to finish, Elena replied, proud that her voice remained steady. We're done, Marcus. Completely done. I don't think so. Marcus stepped closer, ignoring Dante's presence entirely. You're making a mistake, Elena. A big one. You think you can just walk away from what we had? From what we built together? What we built? Elena's composure finally cracked. You mean your complete control over my life? Your constant criticism and manipulation? Your jealousy every time I talk to another human being? I protected you. Marcus's voice rose, drawing stares from other departing guests. I kept you safe, kept you focused on what mattered. And this is how you repay me? By humiliating me in front of everyone? Mr. Coldwell, Dante's voice cut through Marcus's tirade like a blade. I believe I made myself clear earlier this evening. Marcus finally turned to face him, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. You don't scare me, Romano. This is between Elena and me. No, Dante said quietly, stepping slightly in front of Elena. This is between you and me now. You've made it my business by refusing to respect the lady's wishes. The lobby had gone quiet around them. Elena could see other guests watching the confrontation with a mixture of fear and fascination. Security guards were hovering nearby, clearly uncertain whether to intervene with someone of Dante's standing. You can't have her, Marcus said desperately. She's mine. 3 years, Romano. 3 years of my life invested in her. Invested? Elena stepped out from behind Dante, fury overriding her fear. I'm not a stock portfolio, Marcus. I'm a person. A person who chose to leave you because you made my life miserable. You don't know what you're saying. You're confused, overwhelmed. Come home with me tonight and we can work this out rationally. The lady said no. Dante's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper, but somehow it carried more menace than if he'd shouted. Multiple times, in multiple ways. Yet here you are, continuing to harass her. I'm starting to take this personally. Security finally approached, and Elena recognized the head of security from earlier in the evening, a large, professional-looking man who clearly knew exactly who Dante was. Is there a problem here, Mr. Romano? The security chief asked. Mr. Coldwell was just leaving, Dante replied smoothly. Permanently, I believe. Marcus looked around the lobby, seeming to finally realize that he was outnumbered and outmaneuvered, his face crumpled with defeat and rage. This isn't over, he said to Elena one last time. You'll realize what a mistake you're making. When his novelty wears off, when he gets bored and moves on to the next pretty face, you'll come crawling back. But I might not be waiting. With that parting shot, he stalked toward the exit, leaving Elena shaking with delayed reaction. She felt Dante's hand settle gently on her shoulder. Are you all right? He asked quietly. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. She was all right, better than all right, actually. For the first time since leaving Marcus, she felt truly free. Standing up to him publicly, with Dante's steady presence beside her, had been liberating in a way she hadn't expected. Come, Sophia said gently, appearing at Elena's other side. Let's get you some air. They moved toward the exit together, a small group of protectors surrounding Elena. Outside, the night air was cool and refreshing after the heated confrontation in the lobby. I should call a cab, Elena said, finally finding her voice again. Nonsense, Sophia replied. Dante will drive you home, won't you, dear? Dante shot his aunt a look that suggested they'd be having words later, but he nodded. Of course. Sarah, can we drop you off as well? Actually, I'm staying late to help with cleanup, Sarah said. But Elena, call me tomorrow, okay? We have a lot to talk about. She hugged her friend tightly, whispering in her ear, He's gorgeous and clearly smitten with you. Don't overthink it. Elena blushed, hoping Dante hadn't overheard. As Sarah and Sophia said their goodbyes, Elena found herself alone with Dante for the second time that evening. My car is just around the corner, he said, offering her his arm. They walked in comfortable silence through the quiet streets. Dante's car turned out to be a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Elena's annual salary. He held the passenger door for her, another small courtesy that Marcus had abandoned early in their relationship. As they pulled into traffic, Elena finally spoke. Thank you. Again. I seem to be saying that a lot tonight. You don't need to keep thanking me, Dante replied, his eyes on the road. Though I am curious, how long has he been like that? The possessive, controlling behavior? Elena considered the question. It started gradually. Little comments about my clothes, my friends, my career choices. Then it escalated to monitoring my phone, showing up at my work unexpectedly, isolating me from people he didn't approve of. Tonight was the worst he's ever been, though. Leaving him triggered an extinction burst, Dante said matter-of-factly. When someone loses control over their victim, they often escalate their behavior dramatically in an attempt to regain that control. Elena stared at him. You sound like you know a lot about psychological manipulation. Dante's smile was dark. In my line of work, understanding how people think, how they can be controlled or motivated, is essential. The difference is consent and boundaries. Marcus was taking what wasn't freely given. They had stopped at a red light, and Dante turned to look at her directly. Elena, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Okay. Are you afraid of me? The question hung in the air between them. Elena studied his face in the glow of the streetlights, the sharp cheekbones, the intense dark eyes, the mouth that could be cruel or gentle depending on the circumstances. I should be, she said finally. Everything about tonight tells me I should be terrified of you. But you're not. No. The realization surprised her as much as it seemed to surprise him. I'm not afraid of you. Intimidated, maybe. Overwhelmed, definitely. But not afraid. The light turned green, but Dante didn't immediately drive forward. Why not? Elena thought about it. Because every dangerous thing you've done tonight was to protect me. Because you asked permission before touching me. Because you listened when I said no to Marcus, and you made sure he listened too. She paused. Because I get the feeling that for all your reputation, you have more honor than most of the respectable men I've known. Something shifted in Dante's expression, a carefully maintained wall cracking slightly. Elena. A car honked behind them, and the moment broke. Dante drove forward, but Elena could feel the tension in the car had changed, become charged with possibility. Where am I taking you? He asked, his voice slightly rougher than before. Elena gave him her address, and they spent the rest of the drive in silence that hummed with unspoken questions. When they pulled up in front of her modest apartment building, Elena felt a strange reluctance to leave the safety of his presence. Dante walked her to the front door, standing close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtly masculine. Elena, he said as she fumbled with her keys, about the job offer. Oh, that. She'd almost forgotten about Sophia's proposition in the drama of the evening. I should probably think about it more carefully. Working for your family might be complicated. That's one word for it. She finally got her key in the lock, but didn't turn it yet. Can I ask you something now? Anything. What did you mean earlier when you said some of the art pieces are sensitive to regular viewing hours? What exactly would I be getting into? Dante was quiet for a long moment. Some of the pieces in our collection have complicated histories. They require someone who can be discreet about their provenance and their current ownership. Someone who understands that some questions are better left unasked. Stolen? Elena asked bluntly. Let's say acquired through unconventional means over several generations. Nothing recent, nothing that would put you in any legal jeopardy. But pieces that can't be displayed publicly without raising uncomfortable questions. Elena absorbed this information. Any rational person would run from such an offer. Instead, she found herself intrigued. And you think I can handle that kind of discretion? I think you're stronger than you realize. Tonight proved that. Dante stepped closer and Elena's breath caught. But more than that, I find myself hoping you'll say yes for entirely selfish reasons. What reasons? Instead of answering, Dante reached up to cup her face gently in his hands. May I kiss you, Elena? The question, asked with such careful formality, made her heart race. Yes. Dante's lips touched hers softly at first, a gentle exploration that made Elena's knees weak. When she responded, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, the kiss deepened. There was nothing rushed or demanding about it, just heat and promise, and a tenderness that brought tears to Elena's eyes. When they finally broke apart, Elena was breathless. Think about the job offer, Dante said quietly, his thumb brushing across her cheek. But more importantly, think about having dinner with me tomorrow night. Somewhere we can talk without interruption or drama. I'd like that, Elena admitted. Good. He stepped back reluctantly. Lock your door. Set your alarm. And Elena? If Marcus shows up here, or if anyone makes you feel unsafe, call me immediately, day or night. Elena nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. She watched from her window as Dante drove away, his taillights disappearing into the night. As she got ready for bed, Elena's mind raced with everything that had happened. 24 hours ago, her biggest concern had been whether to get highlights or stick with her natural color. Now she was contemplating a job with one of the most powerful families in the city, and had been kissed by a man who could probably have her ex-boyfriend disappeared with a phone call. The smart thing would be to call Dante in the morning, and politely decline both the job and the dinner invitation. The smart thing would be to stay in her safe, predictable world, and find a nice, normal man who collected stamps instead of priceless art with questionable ownership. But as Elena lay in bed, her lips still tingling from Dante's kiss, she realized she was tired of being smart. She was tired of playing it safe. Marcus had tried to make her smaller, quieter, more manageable. Maybe it was time to find out who she really was when she stopped trying to fit into someone else's box. Her phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, fear spiked through her. What if it was Marcus? But the number was unfamiliar. Sleep well, beautiful. Tomorrow can't come soon enough. D. Elena smiled, clutching the phone to her chest. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough indeed. 3 months later, Elena stood in the Romano family's private art gallery, putting the finishing touches on a display of Renaissance paintings that would make the Metropolitan Museum weep with envy. The job had been everything Sophia had promised, challenging, rewarding, and yes, requiring absolute discretion. Elena had learned not to ask too many questions about how a 15th century Botticelli had come to hang in a private estate, or why certain pieces could only be viewed by appointment with background checks. What she hadn't expected was how much she would come to love the work, and the family that had welcomed her with surprising warmth. Sophia treated her like a beloved niece. The other Romano relatives had accepted her with polite curiosity, and Dante... You're frowning at that painting, like it personally offended you. Elena turned to find Dante leaning against the doorway, still dressed in the expensive suit he'd worn to whatever business meeting had occupied his afternoon. Even after 3 months of dating, the sight of him still made her pulse quicken. I'm trying to decide if it needs better lighting, she said, accepting the kiss he pressed to her temple. How was your meeting? Boring but profitable. How was your day with the art? Exciting, but underpaid. It was their standard exchange, comfortable and domestic in a way that still surprised Elena. I may have a solution to that, Dante said, his tone carefully casual. Elena raised an eyebrow. Another raise? Dante, you already pay me twice what I made at the museum. Not a raise. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box that made Elena's heart stop. A promotion. Dante, Elena breathed, staring at the box. From girlfriend to fiancé, he continued, dropping to one knee right there among the priceless artwork. From art curator to partner in every sense of the word. Elena Sinclair, will you marry me? Elena's hands flew to her mouth as he opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring that caught the gallery lights like captured starfire. Are you serious? I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Dante's dark eyes were soft with emotion. I love you, Elena. Your strength, your intelligence, your passion for beauty in all its forms. You've brought light into my life in ways I didn't know were possible. But your world, your life is so dangerous, so complicated. Are you sure you want to drag me deeper into it? Dante smiled, the same predatory expression that had terrified Marcus, but now filled Elena with warmth and security. Sweetheart, you've been part of my world for months now. And as for danger, anyone who wants to hurt you will have to go through me first. That should discourage most rational people. Elena laughed through the tears streaming down her face. Yes, she said, dropping to her knees in front of him. Yes, of course, yes. The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Dante pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that promised a lifetime of love, protection, and adventure. I love you, too, Elena whispered against his lips. Even if you are the most dangerous man I've ever met. Especially because of that, Dante corrected with a grin that was pure, masculine satisfaction. As they held each other among the beautiful, dangerous artwork that had brought them together, Elena reflected on how much her life had changed since that terrible night in the bathroom. Marcus had tried to drag her back into his world of control and fear. Instead, he'd inadvertently pushed her toward a man who cherished her strength and encouraged her independence even as he promised to protect her with his life. Sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the most rewarding one. Elena Sinclair was about to become Elena Romano, and she couldn't wait to see what adventures lay ahead. Please consider subscribing because my mom said I can't hit 1,000 subscribers, and I want to prove her wrong. Thank you for watching.